Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talks Evening Edition Show. I'm Slim Overton, and we are here today, and I'm here also with host and moderator of our Thursday night shows, Leah Bates. Hello, Leah.
Hello, James. How are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here,
Amen.
as they say.
Amen and amen.
Uh, the Colonel might or might not be joining us because he said his internet is out. So we're hopefully he'll be able to join us before the show ends. But if not, we'll carry on in his name. Anyway, before I turn it over to Leah, let me say, please, if you're watching live on Facebook, on our Facebook pages, which are many, my personal page, uh, Leah Great Stitt shares her page, and we have a Coffee Talk Facebook page. And if you're watching on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Share this information with everybody. So we'll get started. And Leah, it's your show.
Wonderful. Good evening, everyone, to Portsmouth Coffee Talk, our evening edition. And I tell you, I am really excited because anytime we're able to offer information to the community is very important. And you know, a lot of times, as I often tell James, some shows about entertainment. We are not about entertainment. We're about information that will be beneficial to those who are part of our community. So I am really happy this evening, to have with us Delorestne Ward, who was a member of the Norcom class of 1973, and they often call it the class that never was, but I said that it is the class that became. And she's a graduate of Churchland High School. She holds a Master of Education in Audiology from UVA, a Master of Divinity from Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University, a Certificate of Clinical Pastoral Education from Norfolk General Hospital, our School of Chaplaincy, and is a hospice chaplain. She's an associate minister at Third Baptist Church on Godwin Street, where the pastor is Joseph A. Fleming, and her mentor pastor is the pastor emeritus, Dr. Joe B. Fleming. But today, she is here not in her pastoral duties, but she is here to share with us and to advocate to bring an awareness to information about intimate partner violence. Much needed information. I'm going to say, welcome, Delorestne. Welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talk.
Good evening, and thank you so much, Leah and James, for welcoming me and inviting me to come onto your show. I do not deem it robbery, and I do not take it for granted that you have allowed me to come and be with you today. And good evening, Portsmouth Coffee Talk. I do not take it for granted that you would allow me to come into your space, that we could talk about something that's on my mind and has been on my mind for a very long time, and that is intimate partner violence. And October is Intimate Partner Violence Awareness Month. So, Breast Cancer Month is this month, and we are so grateful for the strides and the accomplishments to eradicate breast cancer.
Mhm.
However, there is I won't call it a disease, but there is a disorder that is just as serious and, if not more fatal, than breast cancer, and
Mhm.
that is intimate partner violence. Okay, so what is intimate partner
Mhm.
violence? Most of you would know it as domestic violence, a man beating a woman. However, now that the world has continued to turn and acceptance has come into the world and things have changed, and we have same sex marriage is now legal and accepted. It is an accepted way, an accepted practice in the United States, and that they all have the right to the pursuit of happiness as given by the Constitution. Now,
Mhm.
also with acculturation, marginalization, multiculturalism, and multiculture, there has to be more acceptance. So, in all of this acceptance, there's one common factor that does not change socioeconomically, ethnicity, race, creed, denomination, whatever you are, it does not change. It is equal. It is an equal opportunity disorder,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I'll call it, a disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And it is domestic violence, now known as intimate partner violence. So, what's the difference? Why is it called intimate partner violence? It is called that because domestic violence was a man beating a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And partner violence now is women beating women, men beating men, women beating men.
Mm-hmm.
So, with this awareness and with acceptance, things had to change because it's no longer domestic, it
Mm-hmm.
is intimate partner. So, where did it all come from? Intimate partner violence, it is abusive aggression that occurs in a romantic relationship, and it refers to both current and former spouses and dating partners.
Mm-hmm.
It is purposeful, deliberate behavior to gain power and control over another person. It
Mm-hmm.
started back in the 70s when in July 1978, nearly 100,000 advocates, it does not say men or women, it says advocates, they marched on the Capitol in Washington, D.C. And in 1987, October 1987, Domestic Violence Awareness Month was officially observed in the United States. However, in 1989, Congress officially designated October as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The people, when they stormed the Capitol, they all wore purple. They wore
Mm-hmm.
purple because purple for them represented royalty. So this month, in recognition of breast cancer awareness, I have my breast cancer pin, which is pink, and I also have my intimate partner violence ribbon, which is purple. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, you don't find a lot of these ribbons. You haven't seen a lot because intimate partner violence is not readily talked about because of shame and the
Mm-hmm.
stigmas attached to it. However, giving you a little bit more information about it in awareness, did you know that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men have experienced IPV in their lifetime? 1 in 10 high school students have experienced physical teen dating violence. The data confirms from the US crime reports suggests that about 1 in 5 homicide victims are killed by intimate partner, and with over half of female homicide victims are killed by current or former intimate partners. So, with all these statistics, you would think that there would be more information about it. However, it's not because number one, people do not report it for fear of the abuser, for fear of losing their relationship, and they don't have a general trust of the court systems. So they suffer in silence, making IPV, in my assessment, a silent killer
And I'm
because
sure, and I'm sure that for men, they definitely will not support, not report if they were being violated on by a female.
absolutely. And that's why. And then
Mm-hmm.
they're not even counted
Mm-hmm.
until there is a homicide. And that's why the awareness is so important because even though they're being abused and they're maybe calling on the law enforcement or on the courts, it's not really counted until it becomes a homicide.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
it's too late. So,
Now, not to cut you off, but can you, for those who are out there who may not truly understand what intimate partner violence is, what types of behaviors are usually displayed or have been identified as the behaviors of those individuals who are engaged in this IPV violence?
okay, for the perpetrator, it's control.
Mm-hmm.
It's tactics that they use to control their partner. They use intimidation, they use emotional abuse, they use isolation,
Mm-hmm.
they minimize, denying, and they blame. They isolate them from their families. and they tell them, if you tell somebody that I did this to you, it's going to be worse for you. And some people just stay in those abusive relationships because they feel that they don't have an outlet and they don't have a way out and they don't have a means of support. And that's why it's so important for when this occurs that people would reach out to the resources that are available for them. However, now that things have changed, it's not so much about the person that's being abused, it's the perpetrator. Now, we have instances about the perpetrator. Do you know any perpetrators? Are you a perpetrator? Do you have low self-esteem? Do you have relationship conflicts? Are you jealous of your partner? Are you possessive? Do you look through your partner's phone? Do you follow your partner around? Do you stalk your partner? All of these are signs of the perpetrator. And with women and men, it's not easy to go and tell someone. You always need a strong support system, someone you can talk to, someone you can trust, someone that will be there for you to help you. Otherwise, it is, as I say, a silent killer because you're suffering in silence.
So in essence, what you're saying is it's not just physical violence that one has to be aware of. It could be sexual violence, and as you said, stalking, physical aggression. And we look at these behaviors. How are there stats to show how often it can happen? Because it may be a situation where someone will say, "Oh, well, he only hit me one time. Oh, he only sexually abused me one time. You know, he really wasn't stalking me." So, are there variations of times and how often it can happen?
Yes, it starts with tension. Like there's a argument, there's tension in the home, then that can escalate to it can explode to abuse. And then you go through the honeymoon period, what you just said. Okay, he beat you up, and then, oh, I'm so sorry, I love you. And then some of them go so far as to say, I swear to God, I won't do this to you again. That's called the honeymoon period. And during that time, the abused partner thinks that things are going to change. And just like a honeymoon, everything's smooth for a little while. And then one thing can happen and boom, you're right back to where you started. And the abuse starts all over again.
And Delorestne, would you say that this IPV, it does have an impact on the children? So it could be interpersonal violence on the children just by the children observing what's taking place in the household.
Yeah, because children live what they learn. And intimate partner violence, like a lot of behaviors, start early in life. If a young man grows up in a home where he see the father figure always abusing the mother or always abusing the female, then he thinks that's how it should be. And the same way with the young girls. If they see their mother or whoever they're living with always being abused, they think that's how it should be. And so when they get out into the real world, they don't know what it's like to be in a good relationship because they've only seen abusive relationships.
Exactly.
And the intimate partner violence doesn't just affect you physically, it affects you mentally. It takes away your self-esteem. It deals with your emotions. It causes PTSD, depression, anxiety, and sometimes substance abuse. That's why when it gets to that point, some women do commit suicide just to get out of the relationship.
So now we know that interpersonal violence has an impact on all communities. There are no communities that are safe from partner violence. But are there any stats to show where some communities is more prone to happen in some communities as opposed to other communities?
Well, no. The thing is, um, low self-esteem in most cases is the perpetrator. They low education, low income, they're heavy alcohol, sometimes substance abuse, they're antisocial people. These are people who don't have their own self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when you have a person that has low self-esteem connected with somebody that's sociable
Mm-hmm.
and has friends, that jealousy overrides, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where the abuse comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it does not matter what economic status you are. Intimate partner
Mm-hmm.
violence is just that.
Okay, and it seems that it's been happening uh, somewhat, well, it's been happening in same-sex partner relationships
Mhm.
because individuals may not want the community or the public or the family to know that they're in that relationship, and therefore the perpetrator can use that over their head to
Yes,
keep them within the relationship. Can you talk a little more about that?
they use intimidation tactics, and
Mm-hmm.
they say they're going to out you.
Mm,
And like you say, a lot of people are still living outside, and that's fine. That is that is their choice.
exactly.
However, when they are connected with a person of low self-esteem, they will do whatever it takes. They isolate them from their families. They always want to be around. They never allow them to go out on a social occasion with their friends. They always want to be there because they want to keep control over them. That's the main thing about intimate partner violence, is the control that they
Mm-hmm.
have, and the tactics that they use to control
Mm-hmm.
makes the other partner scared,
Mm-hmm.
submissive, and shame is the main reason why a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't. And with the gay men, and sometimes with the gay women, the reason why they don't always report it is because they're not treated humanely when they
Mm-hmm.
go to the hospitals, and sometimes when they encounter law enforcement, they are not treated as humanely as a heterosexual
Mm-hmm.
woman would be if she were
Mm-hmm.
to make a complaint. So because of the stigmas attached to it, and because of the shame attached to it, they suffer in silence.
Mm-hmm. And this has become a health crisis as well, because
Yes,
not only are you suffering from injuries and death, but there are other it has other impacts upon your system as well.
yeah, they you can hearing problems, eye problems, physical pain to the body, and some of the physical abuse is long lasting. It
Mm-hmm.
has an effect that's going to go with them, because they may injure them to the point where they are injured physically for life.
Mm-hmm.
And because people don't talk about it, because they're scared to talk about
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
the perpetrator has the power. And this is why it's continuous. And
Mm-hmm.
this is why it's so important that, along with breast cancer, intimate partner violence awareness should be up on the forefront, because it's a
Mm-hmm.
very present issue in the world today. And it's because of all the marginalizations and acculturations and different cultures. It's not just American women, it's
Mm-hmm.
the immigrant women. They are
Mm-hmm.
being abused as well. And
Mm-hmm.
there are some assessments that people can take to let them know if they are in an abusive relationship or not. And one of the questions would be, this is for you all can figure it out. And if anybody can relate to it, they could just put relate in the chat. Does she
Mm-hmm.
stalk you? For example, follow or spy on you, leaving threatening notes or messages or answer machine on your answer machine or your cell phone, call you when you do not want to talk to them. These are
Mm-hmm.
things that they do. They
Mm-hmm.
will say, they'll constantly blame and put them down, even when they're doing good, their partner, because their partner has such low self-esteem. will put them down, and that bringing them down will have an adverse effect on them, and then they'll start feeling what that partner is feeling. They'll start thinking less of themselves, what the partner wants them to do. And the more the partner can intimidate and use the tactics to keep them under control, the more they will control them.
Mm-hmm. Now, are there ways to prevent IPV? Have they identified ways in which individuals can prevent this from taking place in their lives?
Well, no. As to say yes or no, no. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing is IPV can only happen to you if you allow it to happen to you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because only you can control you. Only you
Mm-hmm.
know you. And so when you get to the point where you are fed up and you're tired of being treated this way, being treated less than, then you are going to have to be the one to make the move to do what you need to do for you. And yes, there are resources available. There's
Mm-hmm.
the National Domestic Hotline, Domestic Violence Hotline, and that number is 1-800. You can put it on the, if you want to put it in the chat, it's 1-800
Mm-hmm.
799 7233. And if you have TTY, it's 1-800 787 3224. Or you can even text START, all caps, to 88788. And those are resources. And if you call the hotline, you in your state, they will refer you to where you can be or where you can go to get some assistance. Now, there are women's shelters, but they are secluded, and they are
Mm-hmm.
secluded for the purpose so the perpetrator won't be able to find them. And I think that's a
Exactly.
wonderful thing. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this is good information because I know a lot of people are in relationships that they have yet to identify, or maybe they know that it is an abusive relationship. However, they just don't want to believe that it is an abusive relationship. That things are going to change, things are going to get better. But if these things are happening continuous in your life, it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse.
Yes.
And so you need to identify the fact that you're in this type of relationship, but are there some ways that women can, I know a lot of times people are afraid to leave. They're afraid to leave the relationship because they think the person is going to uh come and find them. Maybe there's some techniques that they can use, like having a bag packed somewhere, where he can't see it. But they have other means of controlling you. You got to be careful on how you use your telephone, how you use the internet, because they can trace who you've called, what avenues you've searched. So if you're in this
Mhm.
abusive relationship, if you're working, if you're going to search for avenues for help, you need to do it at work, not on a
Yes.
family computer where the person can check to see what you're searching. James, I see your hands up.
Yeah, Leah, I just want you, in relationship to what you're talking about, I think in most cases, admiration or love comes first before you even see any of those signs, and you're kind of
Exactly.
hooked in. But I want to ask a question about, since it covers a broad relationships, not only marriage, the people that live together and things like that. And you would think, marriage is, it's a little harder, when you had that legal document, a little harder to sort of get out of it. And then some people are traditionalists, don't believe in divorce or something like that. But someone that's just living together, you would think that would be easier, to walk away from that. But even people living together, the way it is today, most
Mhm.
people are sharing things just like they are married. So it's
Hmm.
still a little difficult to get away. But are the stats showing that people that are married compared to people that are just living together or just having a relationship, that it's any difference in people just getting away from that? Or it's all the same because of what I said in the beginning admiration and love comes first.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because of what you said first, and a lot of people don't leave because of the materialist stuff, and
Mhm.
they do stay in, and it is, as she said, they need to have a bag packed somewhere over at a friend's house if
Mhm.
need be. So when it does happen, they have a refuge to go. However, you got to have a real friend. It has
That's
to
right.
be someone that you really, really trust, and someone that's going to really be there for you and not say, well, you know what, if I was you, well, you know what, if I was you, you're not me.
Yeah, and
So
you have it good. You have it
this
good.
is,
Look at the house you're
yes,
living in. Yeah,
this
the
is
cars
happening
you
to
drive.
me. Yes. So the thing is to encourage and support is what they
Mhm.
need more
Mhm.
so than a whole lot of if I was you, because if you was me, you're probably in an abusive relationship yourself, but
Mhm.
you're just
Mhm.
telling me to keep yourself from looking at your own situation.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
happens a lot too. And that's why the shame comes in. And it's mostly shame because the people show up with these unexplained bruises.
Mhm.
I tripped over the dog. I
Mhm.
walked into the door. Oh, girl, I slipped down the stairs. And but there are bruises that we can see. And if
Mhm.
we see someone with bruises on a regular, then that would alarm some friend to say, "Hey, is everything okay?" I mean, they can't
Mhm.
come into your home and physically
Mhm.
remove you from the home. Only you can do that yourself. However, you have to have enough courage within yourself to determine for yourself when is enough.
Mhm. Mhm.
When is enough.
Yeah.
And
Let me ask
and
you
the
about
physical. Go ahead, James. Go ahead.
Leah, if you will, just a minute. Yeah, yeah, let me ask you about, this is kind of overlooked too. Teens that are
Mhm.
involved in that intimate. A lot of times the girl or the guy, because like it goes both ways. It can go both ways,
Mhm.
even though
Mhm.
you look more at it, the female being abused, but we must pay attention to the males when they cry out as well. But uh, some teens might not even go to anybody because they might have been bidden by their
Mhm.
parents to even see that young man or
Exactly.
young lady.
Exactly.
So they really suffer in silence as far as that's concerned. What kind of advice? I don't know if you run into teens much in those situations, but what kind of advice would you give them? I mean, for them to order, because the first thing to do is go to your parents. But if
Mhm.
you feel that kind of retaliation, and most kids feel that and don't realize that most parents might be more receptive as far as for what they're going through, but they feel that he told me not to mess with that guy, and here I am
Mhm.
being
Mhm.
abused, and where do I go?
Mhm.
Okay. That's where the shame comes in. And that child should have someone that they can talk to, maybe a guidance counselor or a member of the clergy or someone that they trust. It has to be someone they trust that they can confide in, because if they don't trust them, then they're not going to confide. And if they trust them and their trust is betrayed, then that's just going to push them deeper down the rabbit hole. So what has to happen is they need to talk about it. They need to have
Mhm.
sessions like this. Let's talk about it and allow them to come together and say, hey, are you being abused? Are you being beat up? But it goes back to the home environment.
Mhm. Mhm.
They live what they learn. And an
Mhm.
abuser comes from an abusive relationship.
Mhm.
So it's
And I
generational.
say also it's a classic example, where, parenting, even if you don't think your child is going through that, you have to let them know if you see a friend going through it,
Mhm.
Yes.
you might need to speak up, just like Vice President Harris mentioned in her situation.
About her
She saw
friend.
her
Yes.
friend going through something
Mhm.
at her
Mhm.
home. it wasn't a intimate relationship, but she saw something going on and she spoke up. If she hadn't spoke up, her friend might have still been in that situation. So if you have friends out there, teen friends, make sure they're prepared to step in and help their friend if they see their friend is not getting help.
Yeah, and they
But
need to not to cover up for each other. They need to not to do that. They, the bottom line is adults need to be adults. Parents need to be parents. Stop trying to be friends with your children. Be friends with them when they're grown, 30 years old with a mortgage. But when you're raising them, you have to keep it real and you have to talk to them and you have to make your children so comfortable that they can come and talk to you about something that's bothering them, because that's the only way they're going to get what they need. Because once they commit suicide or attempt suicide, then it's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
But the whole thing about it is the physical abuse we can see, but the mental abuse we cannot see. We cannot identify the mental abuse unless the person goes into a state of depression or the person tries to harm themselves. So a lot of people are suffering from mental abuse, and a lot of people only see when they think about an abusive relationship, they only think about the physical abuse.
Right.
But that mental abuse is much worse than the physical abuse, because the physical abuse, you can hit someone and the bruise can go away. But if it's the mental abuse, it becomes a part of your system. It can mess up your digestive system, your nervous system, your heart. I mean, it just has such a major impact that that we need to, I guess we can watch our friends and see sometimes if their behaviors change.
Yes.
And you need to ask what's going on with you. Why are you doing this? Why are you feeling this way?
And they'll say nothing.
Yes. Did you want to say more about that?
Yeah, well, if you do that, they'll say nothing, or it's all right, or don't worry about it. Where the friend should say, I am worried about it. I am concerned about it because I see a change in you. And the change that I see in you, I don't like the change, because the change that I see in you has made you a different person. You're more maybe introverted when you used to be extroverted. You're more scared all the time, or you're tensed up. And so what is it? And if they talk about it in an environment where they feel safe to talk about it, to express their feelings, what is of how it's affecting them, then when you hear it, then it becomes real to you.
Yeah.
You own it then.
That's right. And as you say, I'm thinking about a friend of mine who was in an abusive relationship. But when you were in the presence of her husband, he was the nicest guy that you could ever meet in your life. He always said the right things. He always did the right things. He was very entertaining, very comical. And when we learned that she was in an abusive relationship, it was hard for us to believe that this person was the person was inflicting the behavior upon her. So, they can hide a lot of things, but I mean, we couldn't see it. We couldn't identify it because we just could not believe that he would be that type of person who would do that. But she was indeed in an abusive relationship.
That's the nature of the beast, of the perpetrator.
That
was his way of controlling her. He controlled her around you all, because when you all were around and he was doing all the talking and making all the comments and, oh, I do this for her and I do that for her. That's
buying her lovely gifts, buying beautiful things for her.
And she was always tense the whole time. I bet you she was always tense.
Always tense.
Yeah. And never said much and never laughed much and never had a conversation without including him in the conversation, because it would be a frightening show.
That's right. And impeccably dressed, because he bought every outfit that she wore.
And
So
told
she
her what
couldn't
to
even
wear.
choose. Yes, yes. So, and it started off really with the things that he was giving her. That's how it all started. But then it advanced on to a higher level. But anyway, yes, and it's something that we need to look at as well. But I'm concerned about this mutual violence. You know, where both partners are being violent against each other. Have you seen or heard of incidents like that?
No, I haven't. And I think that would be really hard, because if both of them are abusing each other, then eventually one of them is going to end up a fatality.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
that's an extra unhealthy relationship to
mm-hmm,
be
mm-hmm.
in. However, in a relationship like that, there's no dominant person. So you won't have a relationship like that where they both
Exactly.
beat up on each other, because in intimate partner violence, there's always a dominant. There's one that has the control. There's one that uses tactics to control. And if you don't have those, you don't have the control, then you don't have the abuse.
Mm-hmm.
In instances like that, they just like to fight.
Just like to have a battle.
Yeah, they just
Okay,
like to
Eric
fight.
Berman says a person controlling is what you call a narcissist. You are so
Yes,
right, Eric Berman. That is so true.
yes.
But what?
I
Let's
had
talk.
a
Go ahead. Go ahead.
oh, uh, a a gay person tell me that they were in a narcissistic relationship, and they wasn't, and she didn't know that she was in a narcissistic relationship until the psychiatrist told her that if she did not get away from that other person, that she was going to die. and
Mm-hmm.
and and when I asked her, did she know, she said no, she just felt like the other person was just needed attention. And so,
Mm-hmm.
because the other person needed attention, that was their way of getting attention, by controlling her. However, when she got away from that relationship and got with another person, the other person came back to the relationship and tried to get back in between that. So
Mm. Wow.
they
Yeah.
don't give up,
Mm-hmm.
but they always try to find a way to keep them subdued and
Mm-hmm.
manipulated.
So,
So thank
what are
you for
your
that
thoughts on
question.
what are your thoughts on people who are in abusive relationships, but the abuse is related to alcohol and drugs? When they're not in that alcoholic or drug state, is they're a totally different person. So what are the thoughts on those who are in the relationships that the person becomes abusive when they're engaged in the alcohol and the drugs?
They're abusive all the time. The alcohol and the drugs just gives them the courage to do what they want to do anyway. Old people used to say when people get drunk, they say stuff, and
That's right. That's right.
then tomorrow they'll say, "Oh, girl, I didn't mean that. I was drunk." No, that was in your heart, on your spirit all the time. You wanted to say it. You
Hmm.
use the alcohol to give you the courage to do it. So in situations like that, the alcohol and the drugs gives them the courage to be in control.
Hmm. So when we're looking at this interpartner violence, we're looking at sexual abuse,
Yes.
physical abuse, psychological aggression, stalking, um,
Yes.
and
Unwanted pregnancies.
cyclical abuse. You know, it happens repeatedly, and it may not happen. It may not happen constantly, but you know when the triggers come. There are triggers, and you can see
Yes.
the triggers that take place. You
And
know,
you can see the
so.
triggers you can see the triggers in one of your friends. Like your friend you were talking about, she was always, tensed, because she knew if she said anything contrary to what he would say, then he would beat her up once you all
Mhm,
left.
mhm.
And so that in itself is enough for someone to say, I've had enough.
Mhm,
I,
mhm,
I, I can't do this anymore. But until someone reaches that point where they reach inside themselves and say, I need some help, and call a hotline, You know, call a friend and have someone that you know you can depend on, someone that's going to support you and be there for you, then it's going to continue.
Mm-hmm. And you know, and at this time, just for those who may have just come on, could you share those numbers again, as to the hotlines that they can call if they are in an abusive relationship?
Okay, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is a 24/7 hotline. That number is 1-800-799-7233. Can I put it in the chat?
Yes, you may.
Okay, hold on. I'll put it in the chat. Okay. You talk, I'll type.
So, um,
I
James, go ahead.
I just want, you know, this whole conversation is about, recognizing and trying to get out of it. How is it any possibilities for the person that is the abuser going to counseling, or by himself or herself, or together with their partners, to try to salvage the relationship? Or is, as far as we're talking about, this is at a crisis stage where the most uh, the best way to do is just get out of it.
Well,
Is there
counseling
any
is
way to
good
salvage that relationship? If that's what they really want.
if they want the relationship. Yes, it can be
Yes.
salvaged. However, it would take counseling. It would take individual counseling on her part, individual counseling on his part, and then maybe therapy counsel, couples counseling. However, it depends on how much abuse, because in most cases the abuser is not going to want to come to
Mm-hmm,
therapy,
mm-hmm,
and in most cases the abuser will abuse the partner even more because it's putting them out on the line. They're going to have to talk about themselves, and a lot of the questions are going to come up is, what is the reason, what are the triggers that cause you to erupt, and what, when you're not drinking or when you're not substance abusing, how are you, how was your relationship then? Those are questions that's going to come up in a counseling session, and an abuser, they're not going to be ready to answer those questions, because that would not allow them to have the continued control. And once the abused find out that they have some resources and they can gain some control over themselves, then it reduces the perpetrator's control, and they're not going to allow that to happen. So it's a very light thing that has to happen. It can't just, they can't come together initially, because they may fight in the therapist's office,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
depending on the
mm-hmm,
abuser.
mm-hmm.
The perpetrator, he, she, it, they may,
Hey, hey,
you know,
I've seen him in the courthouse. I've seen him in the
Mm.
courthouse, and
yeah.
they get to battling
I,
right in the courthouse. So
Mhm.
you know what
yeah,
they may do in the
I had to
counseling
throw this
office.
in. I had to throw this in. I saw a movie one time where this couple, and they were, around other couples, but they always fought each other. I mean, and it got violent tonight. They pulled knives on each other and cut each other. And every scene you would see one of them bandaged up or patched up. But the people around them said, "Hey, it must be love if they take that abuse from each other." Of course, it was a movie, but I can imagine most movies are just an imitation of life
Of life.
itself.
And
It's
that's
just a
one of
little
those mutual.
dramatized, but
That's one of those mutual about IVPs that we talked about earlier, where each one was beating the other one up. So, but
Yeah.
it's not a laughing matter, people. Today we are talking about intimate partner violence, which is abuse or aggression that occurs in a romantic relationship. Intimate
Mhm.
partners refer to both current and former spouses and dating partners. It
Yes.
affects all communities are impacted upon it. There are no economical those there are no economic change differences that make a difference with it, because it happens in every aspect of the economic realm
And life.
and
Rich
life
beat
in
up rich,
general.
poor beat up poor, and everybody
Uh-huh.
in between get beat up. So that's why it's called intimate partner, because it's no longer a man beating up a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to understand that. And there are assessments that people can take. However, if you take an assessment, you need to make sure that your partner can't get his or her eyes on it, because then
Mm-hmm.
that will cause you more problems. I did do one study where I did intimate partner violence, and one of the assessments has a calendar with it.
Mm-hmm.
And what has to happen is every time you get abused, you mark it on the calendar, and you use the Likert score from 0 to 10, the severity, and you put
Mm-hmm.
all of that on the calendar, and you put the calendar by the mirror. And if you look at the mirror, you're looking at yourself, how you have been abused, then you're
Mm-hmm.
marking it down. That's got to resonate with you eventually, where you're going to look
Mm-hmm.
in the mirror and say, I don't want to look like this anymore. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want this anymore. I want better for my life. Because if you have children, your children are watching. And
Mm-hmm.
this is
Mm-hmm.
why the teenagers are being abusive to the young boys, are being abusive to the girls. Maybe the girls are being abusive to the other girls, or
Mm-hmm.
however you would have it. The bottom line is they've learned it at home. It's generational. And until it is confronted and addressed, it's going to continue, and the fatalities are going to go up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's important that well, like we said, it happens in all communities. It's important also that men, there are men who are being abused by their wives. They
Yes,
don't want to share that information because they don't want people to know that they're in an abusive relationship. But there are a lot of
shame,
men who are in abusive relationships.
shame.
Yeah,
Yes.
even that,
Yes.
even with that, Leah, being ashamed, but the believability of the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
will they
Mm-hmm.
really believe that man? You
Exactly.
remember
Exactly.
Terry Crews, the
Yeah.
actor, the big muscular guy, when
Uh-huh.
he
Uh-huh.
first came out and talked about how he was just wasn't really, well, I guess you can call it abuse, where somebody just took advantage and just assumed and wanted to grab him in places where he didn't want to be grabbed. At first, nobody
Mm-hmm.
would believe. He said, "Well, somebody as big as you should be able to fight that off," but
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't his way of dealing with it. His way of dealing with it
Exactly.
was coming out
Exactly.
and letting the public know. And
Yeah,
that probably freed it up for other men to come
Mm-hmm.
out
Mm-hmm.
and say, yeah, well, I've been abused too. And it's no shame.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime Terry Crews, as big as he
Yeah.
is, can come out and admit something like that.
it's
Mm-hmm.
So it's
intimidation.
the believability, even with same sex, you might tend to believe a heterosexual relationship coming
Yes.
out and exposing that, as opposed to a homosexual or you know
Exactly.
a teenage or something like that, or a
Mm-hmm.
man coming
Mm-hmm.
out. So is that factor in there that probably keeps a lot of people from even
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
saying anything for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or
So,
in reference to what you said, James, you have a man, which I saw not too long ago, who was being abused, and he was a pretty big guy, but the person who was abusing him, the woman, was so tiny. She was so
mhm,
tiny that no one believed that she could possibly be abusing this big man. But he was a very mild-mannered man,
mhm, mhm.
and she was abusing him. But of course, he wouldn't talk about it. Once again,
Mm,
that shame factor came
yeah,
in. So he just took the abuse
yeah.
until one day he was physically hurt with the
Mhm,
item that she used to hit him with, and
mhm,
that's when it came out that this had been going on over a period of time. And they
yeah.
found out too through the children. The children made it aware of the fact that this man had been abused. over a period of time, but never discussed it and never shared it with anyone.
And that's one of the stigmas involved with it. It's just like with the stigma of mental health. You know, there is no shame in it. The only shame is that you are allowing it to happen continuously to yourself, and you are not being true to yourself by saying, hey, I'm in an abusive relationship, or hey, you are a perpetrator,
Mm-hmm,
or
mm-hmm,
hey, maybe I am a perpetrator. And
mm-hmm,
then you go and you seek help, because help is
mm-hmm.
available. However, help is not going to come to you. You have to
Exactly.
go to help.
Well,
So I do want to give everybody a homework assignment, if that's okay with you, Leah.
yes, ma'am.
Since this is Intimate Partner Violence Awareness Month and the color is purple, I would like to ask your audience that any of you who are listening, or any of you who may have some friends, and you all get together, wear purple, go to luncheon, or have a late or early dinner, and everybody's dressed in purple. Someone is going to say, hey, are you all a club? What are you all
Mm-hmm,
doing? Why do you all have on purple? Then you can
mm-hmm,
say, we're spreading intimate partner violence awareness, and then you'll be able to talk.
mm-hmm. Sounds good to me. It sounds good.
Yeah.
And it is something that we all need to be aware of. It is something that we need to discuss with our children to let them know what are good touches, what are bad touches, not to be abused sexually, or if you have someone stalking you, you need to be aware that that's not good. You know, if your boyfriend is following you all over the place, that's not a good thing. You know, if somebody's forcing you to do something sexually that you would not do, that's not
Mhm.
a good thing. So you have to look at the signs. You have to look at those things that have been identified as IVP, recognize them, and when you see it taking place, you need to get out of that relationship. Don't think that it's going to get better, because it's not going to get better.
No.
And if you're in that relationship, have a plan of action as to how you can escape from that relationship. Don't use your cell phone. Don't use your personal computer. Have a bag packed that you can leave when you need to leave, and have someone that you can be confident in talking to and sharing this information. Um, Delorestine, this has been some great information. And for those of you who may have missed it on Portsmouth Coffee Talk, on James' page or my page, or you can always go to our YouTube page and you can watch it over and over again. And maybe you can identify someone that you know, or you yourself may be in an IVP relationship. And um and it's time for you to IPV
Yes.
relationship, IPV. So,
Yes.
and you know, you can identify it, and you know some of the things you need to do, where the hotline, how to get to the hotline, who to call, and what to do. So, Delorestine, you want to give us some last words? You've done an amazing job. Let me start with that, and I thank you so very much for wanting to come on Portsmouth Coffee Talk, and being willing to share this valuable information and encourage those individuals to wear purple, get together, have people to ask you questions so that you can address the fact of inter intimate person. Yes, James.
Yeah, I just
James.
wanted to say before the lost team gives her last comments. For one thing, if you see me out and I have on purple, no, I'm not a Q. Okay, so we'll get that clarified. Uh, but I wanted to make a suggestion about a book to read, and this has been she's been a guest on our show before. Her name is
Oh
Kalima
yes.
Overton. Amen. No relations, but she wrote a book called In Plain Sight, and
Yeah.
Mm,
it's
That's
her
a good.
experience and what she went through. And
Mhm.
throughout the book, she talked to other other ladies, and I think some men that had gone
mm-hmm,
through, that kind of abuse, and and the title describes how it can happen right in plain sight. The manipulation. How they pull you in at first, and then
Mhm.
later on the abuse starts pretty early on. So
Yes. Yes.
check
Yes.
that book out. She's been a guest on our show called In Plain Sight by
Yeah, that
Kalima
is
Plain
Overton and
sight. And
Amin.
that's and James, and that's where it happens, in plain sight.
In
Right
plain
before our
sight.
eyes, but we just can't see it. We can't see
yeah.
it.
So in closing, I want to say thank you all for allowing us to come into your space. I hope that we said something that helped you, something that you can relate to, or something that will make you think about it and self-think and say, am I in an abusive relationship? And always remember, you're not alone. Don't suffer alone and die. Thank you
Mhm.
so much.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for sharing this valuable information. I'm hoping that those out there in the electron world will come back and hear all of the wonderful things that you shared with us. And so that they too can identify whether they themselves or someone they know is in an abusive relationship. And it's
Yes.
important that you identify early before there's real harm or danger brought to those individuals who are being harmed. So I want to thank you once again. Thank you so very much, Miss Norcomite. We're going to claim you as a Norcomite, not as a Churchlandite, but as a Norcomite. But we
Go
want to
truckers.
oh no, 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 no.
Yes,
But we
I
want
think
to
she said earlier when I talked to her, it depends on the time of the week which allegiance she shows.
Yeah,
oh
depends on who's
okay, okay.
paying.
But
Depends on
I
who's
think the
paying. Well,
Norcom side is really strong. I think
you
the
got to
Norcom
do it
side
that
is
way.
really strong.
You got to do it both ways. I mean, 2 years here, 2 years there. But
Yeah, yeah, that's
my
equal. Yeah,
allegiance is the what is it? Burgundy and gray. That
There
is
you
my
go.
allegiance. Yeah.
There
yeah.
you go. And
So
that's the
thank
That's
same
where
you
thing
you
you
so
had for
much.
started.
union.
That's
That's
where
what
you
you had for
started.
union, wasn't it? Same
Yeah,
color,
you too.
same color.
UVA was purple, was blue and orange. So nobody's
Yes,
blue and
blue
orange
and
here.
orange for UVA.
Yeah, so
Yes.
thank you all so much, and peace be with all of you. And
Peace be with
please
you.
don't suffer. Talk about it. Tell your children about it. Encourage yourselves and go forward and create something new for yourself. And
Hmm.
don't be abused.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for allowing me into your space.
Thank
Have a good
you.
evening.
Thank
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.